Where have all the sisters gone? For hundreds of years, nuns have been vital members of schools, hospitals, and orphanages. Their unusual dress made it simple to identify them. But since the Second Vatican Council and the move to secular clothing, they have become invisible. This is what nuns look like today. These are the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, and this is their story.
How did you feel about losing your habit?
I loved it. I don't perspire, I sweat.
I couldn't wait to take it off. I often found the habit as a wall.
I think for many people, they were either scared of the habit, or they respected it, or it gave them bad thoughts about sisters that were very strict when they were children.
I loved it. I loved it from the day I put it on. But let me tell you, as the years went by and Vatican II came along, I was very happy to be among the first to change into the regular clothes that we wear today.
I wasn't one of the first ones to change the habit, because I taught in the inner city and the center city. And I taught in the projects during the riots in the 60s. And the habit was a visible sign that really protected us.
We're not visible.
We were in the beginning,
You
and then
were.
all of a sudden,
You
of course, we
were.
were more visible that way because we had the habit.
Exactly.
With the way they dress, the sister, I can't tell the nun from a...
I entered in 1965, right at the closing moments of Vatican II. Everything was changing. It was like living on an earthquake fault. Every time you turned around in our church and in religious life, things were changing. How people related and then how religious women related to themselves was all changing.
On October 11, 1962, Pope John XXIII convened the Second Vatican Council, simply called Vatican II, and summoned his cardinals to Rome to discuss renewal in the Church. When asked the purpose of the council, he said, "I want to throw open the windows of the Church so that we can see out and the people can see in." The proposals on how to bridge the Church's relationship with the outside world, as well as the hierarchical separations within the Church, are still controversial for many today. For the Sisters of St. Joseph, Vatican II was an affirmation of their roots. Abandoning their distinctive habits and moving out of the convents mirrored the work of the founding sisters in 17th century France.
One of the greatest influences in changing after Vatican II was the fact of the Sisters of St. Joseph and their not only acceptance of the results of Vatican II, their being very active in promoting them.
Like, originally when I came in, I thought, oh, nuns, you know, they probably don't really get out a lot.
Sitting in the presence of God is a remarkable prayer. I also like to party with friends, do things fun, barbecue.
She was looking at my hand. She was looking at my hand.
I think there are a couple misconceptions. One is the sisters don't belong in the world. That the sisters are special and they pray and they know things about God and Jesus, but you really don't belong in the world. And that's so untrue, particularly when you look at the Sisters of St. Joseph.
This is what called us to prayer. There are different notes for different chakras.
They have such like a different outlook on life that I think is really interesting, and they realize what is important in life because they don't have all the like materialistic items. They can really focus on their goals and what's important to them.
I think a misconception is sisters really don't know that much about the world, and I'd say we know more than people imagine.
It's one thing to read about poverty and something else to be in the midst of it.
This is where heaven begins. This is where the gospel happens. This is where the cry of the poor takes place, and this is where we live. With the call of Vatican II to go back and look at our roots and to remember who we are, we realized, we remembered that our kind of religious life was very much embedded in this world. I want people to know when they see this that we are alive, that we are well. We're still instigators of grace with them, and that we want to live life and help life get better and reconcile the wrongs with them. We are vital members of this universe called the neighborhood and this neighborhood called the world.
Well, the charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph is to bring everyone to realize the unity that exists in the universe and that all are one. And so through our hospitality, through our relationships with one another, we're a community who's great on forming relationships. And these relationships are formed in order to help everyone realize that we all are one on this planet. One with God, one with each other, one with the dear neighbor, and one with the earth.
The Sisters of St. Joseph were a dream of a young French Jesuit priest, Father Jean-Pierre Médaille. Most religious women lived in cloistered convents at this time. In his little design, religious women dressed as widows would live in groups of 3 and minister to the lay people of the region. The sisters supported themselves by making lace. October 15, 1650, has been the historic date celebrated for the beginning of the order. The French Revolution was a dangerous time for religious sisters. 5 Sisters of St. Joseph were guillotined for refusing to take a constitutional oath. Mother St. John Fontbonne, the superior of the order, was spared. In 1835, at the request of Bishop Rosati, the Archbishop of St. Louis, Mother St. John Fontbonne sent 6 sisters to Missouri. 2 more would come after they had been trained in deaf education in France. Bishop Rosati greeted their arrival in New Orleans on March 5, 1836, and accompanied them to St. Louis. They went directly to the cathedral on the river to give thanks for their safe passage.
This church is called the Basilica of St. Louis the King, commonly called the Old Cathedral. This is where the first sisters who came to the United States knelt and prayed, so it has a lot of meaning for our Sisters of St. Joseph, not only here in St. Louis or in our congregation, but all in the other congregations that stem from Carondelet also.
The sisters' first home in Missouri was a log cabin in a poor Creole community on the Mississippi called Carondelet. 1 week after arrival, the convent school, which became St. Joseph's Academy, opened in the log cabin. A second mission was set up across the river in Cahokia, Illinois. Many French Canadians lived in Cahokia, and the sisters established another school. However, continual flooding made it impossible to remain in Cahokia.
We're coming into this church, which is Holy Family Church. It's the longest existing parish continuously in the United States. 1999, they're 300 years. This is an interesting place where we have often sung Holy Ground, and we've had novices groups from all over the Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph. When they would come to St. Louis, this would be one of the major spots.
Sister Celestine Pomerel and Sister St. John Fournier came to Carondelet in 1837 to create St. Joseph's Institute for the Deaf. Mother Celestine became superior in 1840 and immediately began construction of the first wing of the Mother House to provide a home for the schools and the sisters. St. Joseph's Academy was sometimes called Mother Celestine's Academy.
Now, much as I admire the first 6 sisters, while the foundation was absolutely essential, if it hadn't been for the leadership of Sister Celestine Pomerel, I don't know where we'd be.
She was a risk taker, building another wing on the Mother House, recruiting new sisters, and sending them to other parts of the country. Mother Celestine died at age 43. Under her leadership, the CSJ had grown from 11 sisters to nearly 150 throughout the United States and Canada.
If she could do it, if they could come over here not speaking English and do it that rapidly, I think our possibilities for the systemic change, for being a witness to what loving God means, I think it's boundless if we want to continue it.
were called by God 50 years ago to a life that is a sharing of the life of God. You were called to walk with Him, to listen to Him, to rest and pray with Him, to be sent out and to witness to Him. You are not called to a job. You are called to have a life in God.
My mother was thrilled, but then she kept it low-key because my father was less than thrilled. He was Greek Orthodox. And while he appreciated the sisters, he did not want his daughter to be one.
I had this sense when I was in grade school that it would really be neat to be a sister. Now I think every little girl in my class, in 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, also had that sense, but it stuck with me. You know, my dad said, oh yeah, and he was kind of listening, but go tell your mom. We had a divider wall, so little knickknacks could be there. And on the top little square was a knickknack, and it was St. Jude. And my mom would write notes and put them under St. Jude. That was part of her way of remembering her petitions and her prayers. She had little initials, and she said, what this means is, I was praying that one of my daughters would be a sister, and you're the one.
It's sort of like God making a phone call, calling me, and it's ringing and ringing. Well, it came time for me to go through bride books, and my mom was making my bridal dress, and we were looking through magazines for appropriate dresses and all that. And there was just this big bowl in the bottom of my stomach. And I thought, my fiance and I used to we ran with a really fun group of folks, and we used to do a lot of things together by saying, you'll never know until you try. And that kept coming back to me and coming back to me. Well, I thought, I can go into the convent, but I can't go into marriage doing that.
Our society finds our way of loving incomprehensible, since we have apparently rejected the typical experience of love, the sexual union with one other person. But St. Thomas Aquinas taught that at the heart of the life of God, who is love, is friendship, the unutterable friendship of the Father and the Son, which is the Spirit.
When I entered that September 15th, that evening, we were in dormitories. The dormitory was composed of little cells with white curtains around. And I remember lying on my back with the greatest peace, saying, finally, I'm here.
And I know that just about everybody does have doubts, and I thought, is something wrong with me that I don't? But I knew this is where I belonged. This is where God was calling me. And everything has proven it. You know, at this stage of my life, I can look in retrospect and say, yes, that was right.
It's where I do my best and am my best person.
It's just been a wonderful life for me.
My road to the Sisters of St. Joseph was pretty simple. I was taught by the sisters. I watched the way in which they treated other people, the respect they had for them, the virtues that I wanted to emulate in some way. And at that time, it was the very best way that you could serve God and serve your neighbor. The sisters were wonderful.
Do you think people would be surprised if they looked at the resumes of the sisters that are in administration and see the level of education and experience?
It could be that they would be surprised. I don't know why they would, because we have very responsible positions, and I think it would be expected that we have the credentials to prepare us for this.
Do you think many secular people realize what a large organization that you're managing? I mean, it's almost like a Fortune 500 company when you look at the universities, the hospitals.
I don't think they do.
The CSJ has a shared leadership style where 3 sisters serve as the provincial leadership team. At the beginning of the 21st century, Barbara Dreher, Paulette Gladys, and Suzanne Giblin were the provincial leadership team that committed the province's financial resources to renovate and modernize the Order's first home, the Mother House at Carondelet.
What would you say was one of your best accomplishments of this team during the 6 years?
There have been many things that have taken place. The most visible, I would say, is the putting action to the renovation of Carondelet. What to do with Carondelet has been under study for at least 10 years. We'd either have to raise Carondelet or use it in a very meaningful way, and that's what we said we would do. And if we're going to do that for the dear neighbor, as well as for our own sisters, not just the St. Louis province, this is home to the entire Federation, we're going to have to do some major fix-up. So that's what we did.
The structure was actually very sturdy. It's like the church's one foundation. Nothing was going to happen to the building. So when you look at it and its renovation, I think it's going to be here for another 180 years.
We are in this place, we are in this neighborhood, we intend to stay, and we're putting money and energy into it. I love what that says about us and our commitment to the neighborhood.
You're coming into some of the renovated areas are in the process of being renovated. I want to show you this floor, which was brought back from the way it was in the beginning. It's black walnut and maple, and they've just finished redoing this. We're hoping that there are going to be a number of rooms that they'll be able to bring back. They're not sure about this one. This is a new addition. Rudy Torini, who's quite an artist here in the St. Louis area. And so you've got the first 6 sisters coming. You've got the representation of the log building, Bishop Rosati, who brought the sisters. And so that's bringing the sisters to St. Louis and also meeting the dear neighbor.
We are known as the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. So until I was director of novices and had an opportunity to teach about the congregation, I thought that we received our name from France. Carondelet, sounds French, right? Then I realized that that Carondelet is the neighborhood, and that we received our name from the neighborhood. I love that because we've never been, we say, we come to serve the neighbor from whom we do not separate ourselves.
Carondelet's a South St. Louis neighborhood. It's a pretty forgotten place. Many churches have closed, many schools have closed. In our choosing to stay here, we're not just choosing to stay within the walls.
I think that's going to be our challenge, is to make it meaningful to the people in this neighborhood as well. But it's certainly, I mean, it's already, as far as a place for people to have conferences, to have retreats, groups in for meetings, it's booked. And I think the quality, the way it was done, I really acknowledge and just acclaim the present administration for being courageous enough to take this on.
People were afraid that we were going to gut the whole place and change the history. And we didn't want to change the history. We wanted to house it in a new way. But we didn't want to create a 2002 chapel inside a late 1800s building. And so we kept the original altar and we kept the side altars. But then we brought our Eucharistic celebration into another space. So we have the old and the new. The mission statement for our chapel, whatever we do, all will be welcome. And so how do you take a very sacred space that has a lot of history and open up the doors in a new way and have a space that is comfortable enough to welcome folks? See where the holy water fount is. It's not called a baptismal fount, it's a holy water fount. When we decided to move our holy water fount from the entranceway into the center of our sacred space, we said, what will home the holy water fount? And when we looked at our court constitutions, the phrase that all may be one, which comes from John's Gospel, just bounced out at us. When you're talking about a home that belongs to Sisters of St. Joseph across the United States, that adds so many ties to it.
My first impression of it was a big prison because it was painted gray.
It looked like what the Missouri State Penitentiary must have looked like at Jeff City. The whole building was gray. It had that big stone wall around it. I felt like Thomas Merton when he went through the door down at Gethsemane, and it was like the end of the world, abandon hope, like the gateway to hell and the inferno. Abandon hope, all you who enter here.
Lots of wonderful experiences that I had at Carondelet, so it kind of changes your image of the building when you enter it and become a part of it, and it becomes a part of you.
So that's the arch. We were up here when they put that last piece together. Sister Tobias had what we call the tower room, which is just below. And she welcomed us to come watch the last piece. So, this building had a lot of personality and it welcomed exploration. It's got an attic that doesn't quit. You can find many things. We tell stories about how that's where they would hide all the bad people. Well, there was no bad people. Though I'm wondering is, if we did indeed hide anybody in the attic in the early days to protect them.
This spot is I think has a very important message for us. As the men were working on this room in our renovation, they discovered there was a section of this floor that had been cut out, and it's right here. And this section would lift up. Under this space, we found that there's a whole open space. We can put some things together and realize some history that existed here. This section was rebuilt in 1861. It was at the beginning of the Civil War. Outside this room, there's a staircase that goes up to a lookout, and it's a good lookout on the river. And I remember hearing a story about sisters would sometimes look out on the river at the time when during the Civil War and see the boats come up the river. Whether it was used during the Civil War for the Underground Railroad, there's nothing written. But the fact that the sisters have always taken risks and also taken care of people who came up the river and who came because they were shipwrecked or whatever, they would always take them in. I would see that it fits with our charism.
But you get that feeling of history, even when you walk through the halls.
I love the creeks, however, you can't sneak around any place. But they do hold lots of memories of lots of sacred feet that have trod these halls.
Aging institutions, facilities, and a continued decline in the number of sisters in the order required the community to face many challenges. The sisters' support of their primary institutions reflect their unique charism of service.
It's a kind of ministry that gets into your blood, and you can't let go of it very easily. Our school started in 1837 down at Carondelet. Sister Celestine was one of the two sisters that came, and they were trained in a sign language method. So when they came, they taught the deaf to sign. It was in 1934 that Sister Sylvania changed the philosophy of the school from a signing program into an oral program. And ever since then, we've been teaching the children to speak and to use their auditory ability as much as possible to help them learn how to speak intelligibly. There are numerous other programs that teach children to speak and to lip read and to listen, but we're one of 3 that are day and residential. The building that we are now located in was originally the corporate headquarters for the Kangaroo Shoe Company. The previous location was getting to the point where it was needing a lot of renovation, so Michael Keller, who's our president, began looking around. Mike came in and saw the front, and there's a pedestal out here in front, and he said it looked like it was just waiting for that statue of St. Joseph to be put on there. I think it's amazing that they could take an existing building and reconfigure the space well enough to meet the needs of our school.
St. Joseph Institute broke new ground when Michael Keller was hired as the first lay president.
And how did you end up here at St. Joseph's?
Oh, the Holy Spirit. truly I was ready to make a career change, and I found myself fascinated, and then just over time, way beyond fascination, just really invested in the opportunity, and I've been here now almost 9 years. Certainly when I came here, we were still defining how an institution that had really been turned over most effectively to lay authority, how it was going to function on a day-to-day basis. But I view it as very seamless today. I think that the lay people here view themselves as partners with the sisters and having responsibility in the future to really maintain and own in their hearts the sisters' charism. That is Sister Ann Bernadine. She turned 91 yesterday. And she still answers our switchboard every morning during the school year.
Let me see, I started in 34 and I taught 52 years. As soon as I stopped teaching, I went to the receptionist. I had never seen or been with a deaf child in my entire life. But you know, when you entered the religious life years ago, when I entered, you were sent. You didn't ask or you didn't tell them what you would like to do. So I was sent to St. Joseph's Institute for the Deaf. When we started, we had, it looked like a stethoscope is what it looked like. There was a tube and a funnel. You talked into that. That was the hearing aids that we had at that time. So we have come a long, long way.
We have more children with cochlear implant than any other school in the world. Now the children come and they are there maybe 2 or 3 years, where when I was there, they were there 10 years. Because we didn't have hearing aids that were powerful enough to reach their deafness. But this cochlear implant is marvelous.
Is that right? Did I do a good job?
Yep.
Okay, now what should I do?
Put the B and the green caterpillar.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn to listen, okay?
Why did you decide to change from sign language?
Because sign language is not English language. Sign language is telegraphic speech. They can't learn to read well. They read a little, but they don't read as much. When you learn to talk, you have the full language. And you can talk to everybody. Very few people know how to sign, so they're limited.
Nothing beats cochlear implants. To see how children respond to that, the difference it makes in their whole appearance and everything else, marvelous, just marvelous.
How did you get involved in deaf education?
I was sent. I didn't even know we taught the deaf. But when I got there, I found out that we did. And it was very hard in the beginning because we were doing something brand new. There were no books about it. It was trial and error. But we had wonderful sisters and a wonderful superior. And she had been the superintendent of the schools of the Sisters of St. Joseph. So she was an educator. And she didn't want to go into anything that was, we would say, deafy. Bring them up. We never went down. We brought them up to our level.
I have a long connection with deaf education because my sister was deaf. And she was deafened by spinal meningitis when she was 2 years old. And so when I finished high school, then I chose to enter the community and ended up coming back here. It's exciting to see a child say his first words and just to be a part of that whole process of helping a child learn how to talk and to achieve their potential.
This game and Dad, Pooh, get some sticks and you can play too.
I don't think anything beats the expression on a child's face when they're really getting the message from the printed page. They're happy, and it makes the teacher very, very happy to see that.
Last June, I went to a little reunion of the class of 1951 that I had taught. And I was so pleased. There had been 11 in that class, but one had died, 2 didn't come. The others were all there. And they came from all over because the children were from all over the United States. And I never felt so fulfilled in all my life as I did when I saw these happy, normal, talking men and women. They're retired. They're 65 years old, and they were just wonderful.
My first exposure to the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet was when the oldest of our daughters enrolled at St. Joe Academy. We've had 3 of our daughters graduate from St. Joe, and our youngest daughter, Bridget, is going to be a senior there this year.
So you know Sister Joan Lambton?
Oh yes, Sister Joan and all of the regime that's been there through the years.
This is the oldest all-girls institution west of the Mississippi. This has a lot of history to it.
This is the 3 schools. When St. Joseph's Academy was at Carondelet, and then here is the Academy building on the Fontbonne campus, and this is our building since 1955.
You're starting a new year with a new principal and kind of a new historical moment.
I think it's exciting. This is the church of the laity. I honestly believe that. And all through the 2 years, I wanted to bring in another administrator who was a lay woman. I even thought about a layman. We've had lay people on our faculty from the very beginning. Now it's just predominantly lay people. Of the faculty of 60, there are really only going to be 4 or 5 of us who are sisters. And so they've carried the mission, they carry the story.
St. Joseph Academy expanded the educational collaboration between the sisters and lay teachers by hiring Nancy Repking as the first lay principal of the high school in 2001.
I've had a lot of experience at the grade school and the high school level, and it's all been in Catholic education. And I'm very much devoted to Catholic education, and I especially like the all-girl environment.
There is an opportunity for them to be the total student council. There's an opportunity for them to take leadership, and we do develop so many fine leaders.
I've always wanted to come to St. Joe. My older sister went here.
Ever since my sister started here, I really wanted to go here, and I liked everything about it.
I love all-girls school. I would not trade it for anything. You get the closest people because there's not competition when it comes to things that get catty and things that are so material and things with guys, and it's just you can totally be yourself.
What I like about St. Joseph's is the quality of the students, the high caliber of the academics here, and the fact that they have so many wonderful programs to offer the girls.
If you go into the St. Louis community, what a wonderful school for sports. It is bragging, but we like to state the objective fact that during the 90s, St. Joseph's Academy won more state championships than any other school in the state of Missouri. The awards that are won in science, the awards won in math, but the parents want values. They really want an excellent education, but I think one of their main interests are the values that we inculcate, the values that we believe in.
What is the St. Joe spirit?
Probably promoting our motto, which is not I, but we.
I think everything that happens, we attack it together. Like if there's a problem, it's everyone's problem. It's not just someone's problem. And I think that goes really far past just the academics.
Now, a young lady died right after graduation of the class of 2000, Michelle Harms. And her whole class has gotten together this summer. And they are having a ceremony here. They're going to plant a tree, and all the girls, while they're back from college, are going to come here to do this. There's a close bonding in that respect.
Everyone has just this like love for giving, and I think it's just like a good thing a great thing that we have at our school, and people get really enthusiastic about it.
Of course, Mission Week, which I'm sure everyone would talk to you about, but I think last year for these girls, through projects of their own, to raise $57,000 for our missions in Peru it's phenomenal, because this is not such an elite group of youngsters that they have money to throw around.
Well, I mean, I think this is just that St. Joseph themselves are involved in more areas than just education, but from my viewpoint, that's where I see, their biggest imprint. I think their dedication to young people and to providing the quality education that they will need to, and not just survive in the world, but, be committed community members and, be able to participate and give something back to the community is just a tremendous legacy.
So what's your biggest challenge?
We need more room for teachers. The development department is terribly crowded. This is exactly the same building that was built in 1955, with the exception of the the Carondelet Wing extension. So what we're going to do in this capital campaign is put in a new gym and a new theater, added a 2 classrooms. It's beautiful. It really is. It's turned out to be lovely. It's really only $2 million left. I never thought I'd say only and $2 million in the same sentence. We did it, Bart. We did it.
We have a surprise tomorrow about what's being named after Sister Joan.
5 years ago, Sister Joan came to us with a mission to carry the school forward.
Sister, we thank you for all you've done for us. Next year, we'll be erecting a sign commemorating the athletic complex, and we'd like to invite St. Joe's most ardent fan, Sister Joan, to attend the unveiling. Sister, we'd also like to ask one more thing. If we could name it Sister Joan Lampton.
Thank you all. I just took my pulse. I thought I was dead. I couldn't hear that nice thing. I'll do Father John Arnold one better. I'll say there should be a 10th beatitude. Blessed are those who come to St. Joe, for joy shall be theirs, and you are my joy. Thank you.
The CSJ have a collaborative leadership style where an individual serves as a leader for a time and then returns to the rank and file.
What does it mean for a nun to retire?
I guess we do retire. We retire from a specific ministry or job.
It's different than, I guess, in the secular world, where you get to that top, you keep building higher and higher. We don't do that. So you can be principal for a while, and then you move out of that, and you're a teacher again.
I was talking with Joan Lampton earlier. We were talking about people who are not content to, as I said, sit on the patio and look at the golf course. We are accustomed to working, and we also have the mentality of service. Our mission is to serve in whatever way we do it.
When I decided to retire from teaching, we have a booklet that has all of our sisters' names in it, where they live and what they do. So I looked through the book to see what I would really like to do. And I saw Sister Marie Charles's work, and I came down here and asked her about working for her.
Those are things that we participated in over the years. Those are from the Missouri Community Betterment Program that we were in statewide.
She told me the different things that they did with the elderly homebound.
We have 2 sisters that go out and visit. Sister Mary and Sister Sarah visit the homebound people. And the homebound is a strong program. We repair their houses. The sisters visit them. We take them hot meals from the senior center. We have 2 ladies that help them with housekeeping. And we have an RN on our staff who checks their health needs.
Sometimes it's very sad work, but it's very fulfilling because you know you're helping them.
Most of the sisters I know, even at Nazareth Living Center, our center for our sisters and for lay people, they don't retire totally. They can't. There's something in us that says, if there are people and if there are issues, we want to be a part of it.
Nazareth is a gem where hundreds of thousands of our sisters have gone for their third age, which probably is their most important ministry.
Mother St. John Fosmas was the Superior General following Mother Celestine. The year before she finished her term of office is when she bought the property which is called Nazareth. And there was a farmhouse. She really wanted to have the novices there and some of the elderly sisters. And then in 1880, they began to build the real building that they had until 1965.
I think the historical significance of Nazareth to the Sisters of St. Joseph is second only to that of Carondelet.
I think Nazareth is a wonderful extension of community.
How long have you 2 known each other?
70 years. She was just entered a little after me.
We had our
6 months.
70th anniversary, will be 2 years in March.
And you know what's wonderful? We know so many sisters. We've lived with them in teaching, so all these sisters coming in are friends from years back.
I am so grateful that for the last few years we have opened it up to lay people as well, men and women.
Nazareth Living Center is the soul of the Sisters of St. Joseph. It's the last home for many of the sisters and a place to reconnect with their old friends. To support the retirement center, the Sisters of St. Joseph sold many acres of land around Nazareth. For Sister Rita McGovern, Director of Admissions and Marketing, this decision was true to the charism of the CSJ.
When we first decided through the community and our sponsorship to let go of that land out there, it was very hard, very hard. We went out there as a group and we blessed that land. We consider the layperson as our dear neighbor, as part of our charism. And we literally opened the sisters' home here to the layperson. And for many years we talk about ministering to the layperson, but actually living with the layperson day in and day out was a tremendous effort for the sisters here.
The remark was made that the sisters are not going to be snug in their retirement homes anymore, that we would be asked to share our lives with the lay people. And being human, there were a few negatives and a lot of positives. And as the time went on, the positives really came forward, because the lay people, as I know in the skilled unit, are doing as much for us as we are doing for them.
They were so sociable and lovable, and I don't think you can tell us apart today.
I have great respect for our senior sisters. I mean, they literally opened their doors when the community said, yes, we're going to go license, because eventually we want our ministry that has been here since 1872 continue with the healing ministry of Jesus in the gospel by caring for older people. And as we, through attrition, we're no longer going to be here for many years, that we want that ministry to be carried on to the layperson, and that's what we've done.
With the nuns, the lay people, the nurses, I'm never sad one day because of the spirit at Nazareth.
I'm the CSJ Community Life Coordinator here at Nazareth Living Center. And what that means is I'm the family for the 124 sisters who live here. And I'm also the power of attorney for all 124 sisters who live here in case they can't make decisions about health themselves, and that is all my responsibility.
I don't think anybody here doesn't like Nazareth. They'd be nuts. It's perfect. Everybody here takes such good care of you.
So I just about have you finished.
They're more shocked about it than anybody, because they all, say, gosh, when we entered, we didn't think we'd ever have to worry about our hair again. And now here we are, worrying about perms, and they just never thought they'd see the day.
All right.
Thank you, Carol.
Hi, Cecilia.
Hello.
Sister Rita, how are you?
I'm okay.
You're looking good.
Sister Rita
McGovern. Who's this nice-looking gentleman next to you?
Well, they told him to walk me over to the stairway.
Oh, good. All right. Well, watch her go up the stairs. She goes up by herself.
This is really a very special retirement place.
Oh, it really is, because, we say the sisters come here to do prayer and witness.
We have a very active pastoral care department, and when someone is near death or dying, we help the families go through that by presence of praying. And there's no one here in our facility that dies alone. The pastoral care department, through some volunteers, ask for volunteers to come over and sit with the dying person, and also to be attentive to the families of the residents, and that's a beautiful thing. And who was the first one over here? The Sisters of St. Joseph. As we always say to one another, Sister St. Joseph never retires. She changed ministries, and this is their ministry now.
I retired when I was 85. I'm 89 now, but I was 3 years at Carondelet until they started to renovate, and then I came out here.
What's your ministry now that you've come to Nazareth?
Well, I try to do something that I know. So I'm teaching lip reading to the older sisters that are deaf. I love to sew, so I work for Sister Rebecca in our gift shop. And other than that, I started writing letters to prayer partners. And it keeps me busy because I have 100 of them.
Folks who go to Nazareth don't go to die. They go with a great deal of life.
My nephew came to visit, and he took me in a wheelchair around in the cemetery. And I said, oh, I taught with her. She was my teacher. I went to school. He said, you know everybody. And I said, no, you should. I've been here 70 years. Well, then there's a big pillar out there. And he said, what's that? I said, that's for those that give their bodies to science. And my name's going to be on there because I'm going to do that. He said, oh, well, let me take your picture. So now I have a picture of me and my tombstone.
It's been a wonderful experience for me, not only to work with our sisters, but to walk side by side with these lay people in persons and know, because I've been there before with my own family, my own mother and my own sister, who were in nursing homes. And knowing that we walk with them into different areas of the death and dying, it's a wonderful experience. I just love what I'm doing.
I've had a wonderful, wonderful life, and I've been happy every minute. I've been busy, hard things to do, but it's been wonderful.
The changing roles and employment opportunities for women during the second half of the 20th century may have contributed to a decline in the number of young women entering religious life. The male-dominated hierarchy in the Catholic Church seems to continue to close the windows for religious sisters and laity that Vatican II sought to open.
My fear is that our bishops are afraid to lead out of gospel and Vatican II values. Vatican II reminded us that God is alive in us and that you in your leadership role have a role to mentor us and to constantly reflect that grace back to us, but we also have that role.
The tragedy is it hasn't gone far enough, and it hasn't gotten the universal support that it should have gotten by the hierarchy. And the very serious problem today is that there is a growing tendency to think that the past was better than the present or the future.
I think it's a scary time. And most of us, it doesn't have to be church leadership, most of us in our leadership roles, once we get scared of maybe losing the power and the responsibility that we have a tendency to go back to the old, or we'll just go back to what we knew before, and you'll be in your place and I will be in my place. There is no room for that in our church today. There is no room for a caste system. There is no room for a hierarchy that separates itself. If we do not church together, my fear is that the church will die. There are huge issues among our membership. One of the issues is Eucharist. One of the issues is the role of women in church. One of the issues is how decisions are made.
We are part of the church, and we are committed to keeping the dialogue going. And that's the only thing we can do. We cannot agree with all of the directives that come, but we're not going to cut ourselves off. We are a pontifical society, and we value that. And the best way that we can see to do this is to continue the communication. If it's real communication and real dialogue, then we'll get underneath what some of these surface issues are.
In September 2006, there were 444 professed sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet and 1 novice in the St. Louis province. The mean age of the sisters is 71, but the sisters continue to plan for tomorrow.
Where do you see the future for the Sisters of St. Joseph?
I think that we have many people who are associates. We have wonderful institutions that we've begun. Shakespeare is it? The good that is done will never be undone. I'm not sure that's Shakespeare. I don't know who said it, but I believe that phrase. And the wonderful women that have gone out for our institutions, the elderly that have been cared for, the hospital work that's been done, all of that is such a great good. If the future doesn't hold the momentous numbers of sisters as we used to have to be doing this, we have left this legacy, and the people who've worked with us also have that charism, but they're married people and they're single people and they're people who want to do this, and are learning from us and passing it on to the next generation of people who work in those institutions or carry on the work. That's what I believe.
There will be a drastic change. But I think we have to remember that the large numbers of young people, young women coming into the convent was a blip in what historically has taken place in religious life. We had 6 sisters who came to the United States. And look what the mustard seed has grown into.
We're very much alive. We may not be in the habits that we were in years ago. We're not young, we're not in large numbers, but we are still meeting the needs of the times.
We're disturbed about poverty. We're disturbed about inequality. We're disturbed about people that do not have a voice, that do not have a face, that do not have a vote. We're so disturbed that we will not go away until we can in some way effect some good for the people who are voiceless, homeless, poor, unseen.
We are at the business of finishing the lace. Our work is not done. Our work is not done. And it won't ever be done, but we're going to continue. So that's the idea of the unfinished lace.
When I came, it was in the bell tower, high atop part of the building here. We brought it down 2 years ago to clean it, and we thought we'd put it in the archives area, and that's when we said, no, the bell's still alive. Bells are participative. And so we decided where people can actually ring it. And so so our history is alive, and the bell will ring. And the day the bell won't ring, probably nobody will be here. But we're not gone yet, and so we ring it.